Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second last character analysis. We've got two more characters to go. We've got Mr. Welt and one of our newer characters, I believe Yang Qing. Terrible pronunciation, but we've got two more characters to go, and let's blast these bad boys out. Today we're looking at Mr. Welt Yang, or if you don't play Honkai Impact, just Mr. Welt. I'm not sure if we know his last name in HSR, but that's besides the point today. We're going into this character. He's imaginary and nihility. Now, if I open up the correct tab, we jump into here, we go introduction to the game, I believe, and we go to what does nihility mean? That means a debuffer. Again, you apply some sort of dot to the enemy, some sort of debuff, some sort of thing onto them to either reduce their damage dealt, increase damage taken, certain things like that. That is what a debuffer is, and that is what he does. But if we're going to go furthermore, we have to understand what imaginary does, and we have to specifically understand what imaginary does in Welt's case specifically, right? He is very, let's say, powerful if you understand and kind of know what a lot of things mean, and that one specific thing meaning imaginary imprisonment, right? That is the core part of his kit. I'll obviously explain things as we get into the kit, but that is what he's based around. Now, what does that mean? Well, naturally, for every imaginary character, when you weakness break them, you're going to apply the imprisonment effect, right? This is the one specific thing I want to outline with imaginary characters, is that when you weakness break, you apply imprisonment, which that pushes the enemy back in the turn order and reduces the enemy speed, which is extremely good, right? And this is caused, again, like I said, when you weakness break an enemy using an imaginary attack. Mostly going to be used against imaginary weak enemies. You can use it against others, but yeah, that's where that is. And now that we've understood that, we can actually get into his kit, because his whole kit is centered around this mechanic. Now, going into his skill, you slash 3 times, each dealing imaginary damage equal to a certain percentage of Mr. Welt's attack to a random enemy. On hit, there is a certain percentage of base chance to reduce the enemy's speed by 10% for 2 turns. This is a base chance, so it is alterable with effect hit rate. You may want to run a small bit of that just to boost these percentages, maybe up to 85 plus, right? But somewhere around there. But apart from that, it is a 10% speed reduction for 2 turns on an enemy if you do get the proc, which is good. You apply a debuff and it reduces speed. This is not necessarily the imprisonment effect because it doesn't have that turn push order back, but it is nice to have a nice slow. It is also on a single enemy, so it is, this is an okay skill. Nothing too crazy, but it's fine. Going on to the ultimate, deals imaginary damage equal to a certain percentage of Welt's attack to all enemies, right? Keyword, all enemies. Then there is a 100% base chance for enemies hit by this ability to be imprisoned. Again, that 100% base chance is affectable by effect hit rate as well as effect resistance. So if the enemy is more resistant, it's going to change to be lower, and the higher effect hit rate you have, it's going to be higher. Bear that in mind. And then imprisoned enemies have their actions delayed by a certain percentage, up to 41%, and speed reduced by 10%. Now, this is the core part of his kit to understand, is that if you do have this 100% base chance guaranteed to proc, you will apply the imaginary weakness break effect to all enemies at a very high potency. 41% pushback in the turn order, and a 10% speed reduction, essentially pushing them even further back in the turn order, is extremely potent. Specifically, if you're running a high speed build on your own characters, and then you just lower all enemies' speed and reduce their, remove their, or rather push them back in the turn order. I couldn't find the right word. It's extremely potent. His ultimate, and it's very, very good, and this is going to be the core part of his kit that you're going to be playing around with. Now, going on to his talent, if the enemy is already slowed, deal additional imaginary damage. So if they already have the slow effect on them, you just deal more damage. It's fine. You're going to be doing it, but it's not going to be an overly overpowered thing, so it's an okay talent. And then the technique, arguably actually a very good technique, to be absolutely honest, and it is one of these ones that you can pre-use before entering combat. It is an area of effect thing that lasts for a certain amount of time, so it's kind of like a small buff, but what it does is, after using Welt's technique, create a small black hole zone that lasts for 15 seconds. Enemies who enter this area have their movement speed slowed by 50%, which is quite good, slows them from chasing you. And then upon entering battle in the black hole zone, there is a 100% chance, it's static as it doesn't say base here, It is a 100% chance for enemies to become imprisoned. Imprisoned enemies have their actions delayed by 10% and speed reduced by 20% delayed and 10% speed, which is extremely potent at the start of a battle, as it will give you near guaranteed chance to have the upper hand or upper edge on these enemies in front of you. So a very, very good technique. And if you do have Welt, you're going to most likely, more often than not, always be using his technique to enter every battle, at least as the pre-buff one, and then use someone else's to engage in combat. I believe that is going to be a bare minimum if you have the character. Now, quickly dropping down to the traces. His first trace increases ultimate's damage by 25%. It's fine. More damage is always welcome. Trace 2, using Welt's ultimate, additionally regenerates 10 energy. It essentially gives you a 10 energy refund on his ultimate. Again, it's fine. It's potent enough to carry him a bit. And then lastly, the third trace, deal 20% more damage to enemies afflicted with weakness break. Again, just a bit more damage in a very specific situation when their weakness broken. It's just good for your damage phase. Overall, his traces are fine. There's nothing here that blows you away. It's all kind of just very high quality things, but nothing extremely powerful. And that's kind of the character overall baseline. He is very good, right? Again, I wouldn't call him overpowered baseline. The imprisonment effect applying to all enemies is the most powerful thing about him, and this is borderline overpowered, but I wouldn't classify it as overpowered. It is borderline overpowered, though. That is the term I would use. Overall, his base kit without any eidolons is extremely good, and if you get this character, again, it's going to be one of these characters that is, you know, I'm kind of formulating my tier list right now as I'm thinking about a few characters here and there, and just with this character's, you know, kit, it's up there. It's up there in the top 2 ranks at least. So this character is good. If you get him, you're having a good time, right? 10 out of 10 so far. But obviously, eidolons make a character even more powerful. So let's get into those. Now, for Eidolon 1, this is what it does. After using his ultimate, Welt's abilities are enhanced. The next 2 times he uses his basic attack or skill, he will deal additional damage equal to 50% of his basic attack or 80% of his skills damage multiplier respectively. More damage, it's okay, not an overly powerful one in terms of, let's say, what he's actually meant to be doing, which is being a nihility character, but it's just more damage, and more damage means less enemy HP, right? So it's okay, I guess, right? I'll accept it, but I don't like it. Going on to his Eidolon 2, when his talent is triggered, Welt regenerates 3 energy, and if we remember his talent, it is essentially hitting an enemy that is already slowed. You get that extra proc of damage. So you have a bit more energy regeneration if all enemies are slowed. This is primarily going to be useful after you've cast your ultimate, because all the enemies are supposedly going to have slow in them now. So it's mostly used there. But again, no matter the situation, he regenerates 3 energy when he procs his talent, which is very, very good. Eidolon 4, when using Welt's ultimate, there is a 100% base chance to increase the damage received by the target by 12% for 2 turns. Now, this base chance is alterable by effect hit resistance and effect hit rate, so bear those 2 things in mind. And 12% increased total damage taken by the enemies for 2 turns is extremely potent, as it is one of the multipliers. Now, I only found out this recently, and I'll touch upon it very, very briefly here. But on Pridewin, if you guys do want to find this information for yourself, it's pridewin.gg. They have a lot of good stuff for Honkai Star Rail right now. And there is a damage formula section. And just to outline how powerful these things can be, and I'll also outline this a bit more in the tier list video, just talking about briefly with characters, is that there are a bunch of different multipliers, and you want a lot of these, or all of these multipliers, to be increased at the same time. You don't really want to funnel into one multiplier just by itself. You want different multipliers, right? You want to get a wide range of them, and damage taken multiplier is one of the last ones, which ends up being the last multiplicative one, right? And so, taking that into consideration, 12% damage taken by the enemy is extremely potent in that regards. I'll elaborate more on that as we get into the tier list video, because that's where I'm going to be talking about what each character provides in terms of like just raw percentages or diversity. But as for Eidolon 4 for Welt, it's extremely potent just because of that one thing. Very good. And lastly, unfortunately, Eidolon 6 is not that amazing, but it's fine for the most part. When using Welt's skill, deal damage for 1 additional time to a random enemy. Essentially, his skill hits twice, which, to be quite frank, isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's also not the greatest thing I've ever read in my life. Now, what does it essentially mean? What can you do with his Eidolon 6? Well, you can technically just hit one enemy twice because it is just a random enemy, and if there is only one enemy, then you hit them twice. And so with one skill, you can technically trigger this twice or once. If they don't have speed, then you apply it with the first hit, and then the second hit triggers this. And if he has a speed already, well, each skill gives you 6 energy in total because you trigger it twice. It gives you more damage. So in a very, very specific situation, it is pretty potent, but all it is just more and more damage. I wouldn't say it's anything more than that. So take that how you want it. It's just more damage. Overall, okay. I wouldn't call it the best Eidolon 6 in the game. And now the character with Eidolons is pretty good. He doesn't, it's like, again, it's nothing crazily overpowered. And it's just really the part that sells him as the best character, or one of the better characters in the game right now, is that ultimate right now. He is one of the only characters right now that has a universal push everyone back in the turn order ultimate or ability like that, as well as speed reductions. And if I'm to give a small little cliff notes here, is that speed reductions in turn-based games are extremely potent. That's kind of what you want. If the enemy attacks less and you attack more, you have a higher chance of victory. And that is what Welt Yang right now does. Other characters do it here and there. There are a few other characters that have, speed reductions, but it's not to the same extent like Mr. Welt. And so that's why he probably pulls ahead. And that's probably why he's going to be one of the greater characters at the start, because a speed reduction and turn order push back is extremely powerful. So the character is very good, but they're also enhanced with their light cones. So let's take a look at the light cone for Mr. Welt Yang. Now, going into his signature light cone, in the name of the world, increase the wearer's damage to debuffed enemies by a certain percentage. And then when the wearer uses their skill, the effect hit rate of this attack is increased by a certain percentage, kind of guaranteeing the application of slow with his skill, and attack increases by a certain percentage. Naturally speaking, his signature is always going to be his best in slot. There's absolutely nothing that can compete right now. It just works with him, and having that 100%, because obviously the effect hit rate there increased to his skill is going to practically put it at 100%, as it is at 77. So you have roughly a 20% increase overall. It'll go up to 80 something. You get a small bit through the relic sets, and you're fine, right? So technically almost 100. Being able to guaranteed apply slow with your skill is incredibly potent, and also the overall damage increase is also very, very strong. So this is going to be his best in slot, no questions asked. Also, you have 4 stars to think about if you don't have his signature 5-star. Eyes of the Prey is fine, increases the overall effect hit rate of the wearer by a certain percentage, and increases dot damage by a certain percentage. Now, Welt Yang doesn't have dot damage, he has just the slow dot, which is not a damage dealing dot, so you don't get this last part, but if you need universal effect hit rate, then this one is fine. Good Night Sleep Well will most likely be your highest damage throughput option, as it does this. For every debuff that the target has, the damage dealt by the wearer increases by a certain percentage, stacking up to 3 times. This also applies to dot damage. Now, obviously, Mr. Welt Yang, I don't know what the fuck I just opened. Mr. Welt Yang doesn't have any dot damage, but, you just get a universal damage increase for dots on the enemy, stacking up to 3 times. So, it's good. Now, you won't be able to get those 3 dots overly easy. You'll have to have your team support you with that. But in the long run, for the 4-star options, Good Night Sleep Well will give you the highest potential damage potency. And as for We Will Meet Again, it's universally not that great, so don't try to use this one. I highly recommend either of these two. Good Night Sleep Well for damage, Eyes of the Prey for a bit more utility, but overall his 5-star is going to be his best in slot by a very, very large margin. And then jumping over to the relic sets, there's only really 2 good options for this one, and it's going to be 1 utility or 1 damage. You're going to go for 4-set Wastelander of Banditry Desert for desert, for damage purposes. The 4-set is going to give you 2-set, a 10% imaginary, and 4-set when attacking debuffed enemies. The crit rate of the wearer increases by 10%. If the enemy is imprisoned, then the wearer's crit damage increases by 20. The reason this one's going to be best? Well, here's the thing. He implies imprisonment just with his ultimate, so you get this one without having to actually weakness break the enemies. And for damage purposes, this is what you're going to run. No question about it. This is going to be his best in slot for damage purposes. But if you want to have him a bit more utility, you may want to try Thief of Shooting Meteor. Now, this one is a little bit more break efficacy, and you know, when the wearer inflicts break on an enemy, regenerate 3 and more break efficacy. So if you're fighting imaginary specific enemies and you're struggling to get their weakness breakdown, consider Thief of Shooting Meteor. But the overwhelming majority of players, I believe, will be using Wastelander of Banditry Desert as it's just too powerful to not use, as 10% crit rate, 20% crit damage, like just from a set bonus. Like, come on, I don't know. I'm not even gonna try to like argue that. It's just kind of like an obvious answer. So that is what I'm gonna wholeheartedly recommend. But the other one is fine, right? Wasteland of Banditry Desert for the relic set is my recommendation. As for the planetary ornament, you got pretty much a lot of stuff is open to you. You can go for damage, you can go for effect hit rate. Now, it depends on what you have as a light code and your general effect hit rate. This is how I always recommend this stuff, is what are you lacking through your stats? Try to fill in with your set bonuses. If you are lacking a lot of effect hit rate, get 2 set Pan-Galactic Commercial Enterprise, as it gives you more effect hit rate. That's going to give you a lot of utility. If you're lacking in terms of crit, then go for Celestial Differentiator or Inert Salsodo, depending on which one you kind of want. My recommendation would be Inert Salsodo, as it has a lower crit rate requirement, so you can actually get the second part of it. But that's up to you, really. If you need more just raw attack, space healing, so it really depends. My recommendation, if I was to use the character, is going to be probably Pan-Galactic, because you really want to try to get those, you know, applications of slow and all that stuff up to roughly 90%, right? You want to guarantee apply all of his dots throughout all of his kit. Just, you kind of want it to be guaranteed, right? You don't really want to, you know, you have a chance to miss, right? And so 77%, I believe it is baseline, right? It's a bit too low. And so getting that up to 90, 95, 100 is kind of what I would aim to do. And for that, I recommend Pan-Galactic. So a quick summary. For the relic set, it's going to be 4 set Wasteland of Banditry Desert, and then 2 set Pan-Galactic Commercial Enterprise for the planetary ornament. And that is Mr. Welt Yang. And that is Mr. Welt Yang done and dusted. This character is actually very powerful. Very, very powerful. He's probably in about the top 3 to top 4 strongest characters in the game right now, if I'm just thinking off the top of my head. As for the tier list, I'll get back to you guys once we get to that portion of this whole HSR analysis series. But yeah, Mr. Welt Yang, very powerful. If you get him as one of the early ones, I'm not sure if he'll be very, very useful as your first character, because I doubt that you'll need speed management and like speed reduction very early on in the game. This is very much an end game grinding kind of character. You know, what did Pride rate them? S+ for all things. That's probably true, but I'd say as your first, like, a 5-star character, not going to be the most useful. But if you do get him early, just save him for the future, because he'll definitely prove his worth later on. Hope you guys did enjoy the Welt Yang analysis. We've got one more character coming tomorrow, Mr. Yanqing, or Yanqing rather, and I'm keen to get into him, as I think I'm going to probably enjoy his, like, aesthetic and general vibe. But more of that tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next analysis.